Mo, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to jump right in because we just have such little time and so much to get through. Again, I'm Bobby Small with Doug and happy to host this, but turning it over to Mo and remember you can drop your questions into chat or the Q&A. We'll be watching and answering as we're going through. Thank you so much, and Mo, go ahead and take it over.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen in a second. Okay, for some reason, I cannot share anymore.
Do you want me to see if I can pick up and share then?
Yeah, please, if you can, because I cannot.
You got it. And the PowerPoint is still off the.
Part of the hot off the press, André, wasn't that there's Teams issues, was there?
Yeah. Can everybody see my screen?
We can. Thanks, Bobby.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. And we seem to have lost Mo as well. So I'm going to pass it to the next person to pick it up.
I can take it more. Yeah, I should be good now.
Okay. Somebody else is now sharing their screen?
If you want, I can take it over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, you got it. We'll be cutting this out of the recording for sure. And if everybody, if you're not, I was gonna just stay muted if you're not speaking, if we could, just to keep it clean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. So very quickly on who we have here, a very distinct group of people, experts around the table. Myself, Mo, I am a D365 F&O architect. We have Steve, Tad here, or Tom. They are the two end users dealing with the licensing issues in the past number of months since Microsoft introduced that. We have two very distinct gentlemen here from Microsoft MVPs, André and Alex. You guys have probably followed their work, fantastic work online and all the conferences. So they'll be contributing, I think, a great deal. We also have Saurabh from Microsoft. We're very glad to have Saurabh around this time. So he will be obviously, shedding some light on the, whatever backend is going on Microsoft, and he'll be trying to answer questions on that side. So with that, I'm very quickly gonna go to actually the slides that we have prepared. So as everyone knows, we had these the first part of the series last time, and we talked about quite a few things. Today, it's going to be mainly about now that you got your licenses compliant, what is going to happen next? What are the actions? What are the problems that you're going to run into probably? And then how can you prepare the best for that? Before we get started actually on those topics, and we would like to just talk about the first part of the first part of the series that happened last month. And we're going to have run down through the issues that were, mostly questioned. We had mostly questions about those. And then also, we are going to be talking about some other information that, Alex is going to share us based on the, the recent updates we got. So Tad, I don't know if you're online, if you want me to go over these ones as you prefer.
Well, my audio might be a little bit choppy. I'm on a hotspot, so if this doesn't work, then I will pass it to probably pass it to Steve then, and say, "Hey, Steve, can you can you help out? But as far as a recap from the last session, let's see. I got my notes here somewhere. There were a couple things that people asked about, and we wanted to make sure that we were covering that. First thing up here is that it was mentioned before that if you're building out custom objects, how is that going to get licensed? And we got some confirmation that that's all going to require a team license. So there's no mechanism to create custom objects and avoid licensing altogether. Second thing was there's a lot of discussion about device licenses, and everybody should know that the device licenses themselves do not show up in the PPAC reports and the license count reports. So those are still on the honor system. If a user is configured to do time registration in production floor execution, or if they're going to use the warehouse app because they're set up as a warehouse worker, they don't need a license because they can just use the device license, but the device itself needs some sort of license to be able to authenticate to Dynamics. If you have an organization where you're licensing the person because you want them to do other things like leave an absence and other workspace functionality, and then they also use a device, you'll need to, it doesn't really handle that well, but any user in the user list who is active and has roles assigned will need a license. So if your warehouse personnel are active in your user list, they'll need a license. If they're only active in the warehouse worker list, they don't need a license. There were some questions about the grace period for conversion or for becoming fully compliant, and we got some confirmation just 2 days ago where whichever you might have a software cloud enrollment or a CSP agreement, and whichever one comes up for review first, that's going to trigger the start of your login enforcement. Now, login enforcement is you can't log into Dynamics unless you have the correct licensing. But that gets us to our next point, which is what's the difference? What about when should I become compliant? You should be trying to become compliant now. You may not be blocked from logging in until your enforcement date, but they're still capturing telemetry on that right now, and you don't want to be shown to be not trying to become compliant and then have them come in and say, well, since you weren't trying to become compliant, we're going to back charge you for licensing. So you should be starting it now. And we had a couple other points in here. There was some service accounts. You might have a number of service accounts active in the user list, and as long as they're only given one of the special roles that does not require a license, then they don't require a license. So be careful about how you configure service accounts. There are going to be more recommendations for more service accounts, where each service account has a bare minimum access to do just the thing that one service account needs. So you really should not be getting in the habit of assigning system admin to all of your service accounts. That's just bad form from a security perspective. Let's see. We don't really know much more about the capacity enforcement in Dataverse. There's still a lot of that's coming. There's probably going to be more enforcement in 2026, but they're working on the license enforcement before the capacity enforcement. And then you'll still have to go to the licensing guide to get the capacity chart. But there are some of the stuff in Power Platform Admin Center is giving a slightly better view of what your capacity entitlements are and how they all total up. So continue to look at PPAC as they improve the reporting there. We've got let's see. There might be an option for swapping licenses at various true-up intervals. Like if you have too many finance licenses and you want to swap them to supply chain, you can actually do that, but there are mechanisms to do that, but you will still be paying the higher priced license. So if you want to switch your excess finance licenses to project operations licenses, you're still going to be paying the finance license price, even though the project operations license is lesser until your renewal term.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Todd. If there are other points, I think we can you can maybe put your notes together. Alex, I think you were going to talk about some of the things that came up during the summit in Orlando. If you want to go ahead and talk about those.
Yeah, some of it's just adding more color to what Tad talked about. One of the things that was brought up in my licensing session from the Microsoft folks is that there is a somewhat larger release coming out here in the middle of November. Microsoft, as far as bug fixes and updates, Microsoft does understand, right, that there has to be at least an attempt, right, to stop somewhat changing the license requirements, right? And so, as they put it, right, they want to go pencils down here fairly soon in the middle of November. So you will start seeing some new functionality from there. Another scenario that was addressed or should be addressed if it hasn't been already is the idea of having similar licenses assignments, right? So in the previous licensing, right, you could have a finance base with a supply chain attached, which was the same thing as a supply chain base and a finance attached, right? Those types of scenarios should start being equivalent, right, in the new reporting as well. So even though you have the nice priority from the license perspective, right, and there still might be ones, especially at the same license or pricing tier, right, that you can swap in and out. Like Tad mentioned, the custom objects was another point of clarification we got. Right, if you have a third-party custom objects or custom objects that developed in-house, right, regardless of if you have read or above access to those are going to require team member license across the board. We had a question about worker records and device licensing. Right, those are right now not a part of the actual compliance or the enforcement piece, right? You still need to have the licenses for those and should be, making sure that those are matching up. But right now, as far as I know, anybody can correct me on the panel, right? There's no place to actually assign those device licenses yet or report on them really. So the enforcement for that is coming later, but as of right now, that isn't part of the V1 or first wave of enforcement. And then also, like Tad mentioned, Microsoft released like 50 some roles out of the box roles that aren't going to require a license. So as long as your service accounts, right, or any other user for that matter can do what they need to do within those roles, right, they would avoid needing a license. If, however, your service account or any other user has an additional license, right, or requires an additional license or additional roles, right, in the system to do their day-to-day operation, then they would have to be licensed for those the roles that they're assigned. So once you go outside of the roles that Microsoft has designated, right, you kind of break that idea of not requiring a license. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much. André, Saurabh, Steve, would you guys like to add anything to what Tad and Alex talked about?
Yes, actually, Alex talked about some upcoming changes. If you just install already the latest available quality update for your versions, there are some new features available. And if you look at, for example, the security configuration page, Initially, there was, if you copied an existing privilege or duty, just a privilege, it could have some hidden objects invoke or correct permissions, which erased also the license requirement to write access. Now there's an option to also maintain those two settings on each of the menu item access levels. So if you have certain menu items with invoke or correct access, now from the user interface you can directly change it without any cumbersome workaround. And if you just copy an existing privilege, duty, or security role, there is an additional feature where you can also tell the system, I would like to copy it, but please also just reduce it to, for example, only a finance license. And that could be helpful in case you have some roles which now requires more than one license. If you would like to split it up, then it's an option to just create a copy of your existing role for just only the finance purposes and another one for only SCM. So that's a new update. And also what I noticed as of this week is that the refresh rate of the license reports are way more than used before. For example, on the Power Platform Admin Center, the refresh rate is now 4 times a day instead of once a day, which was previous. And some more changes are upcoming, but I can talk about a whole hour, but just let the conversation continue. Yeah.
All right, that's perfect.
Mo, if I may just add something there. So
sure.
From an end user perspective, and I'm sure Tad will have a viewpoint on this as well, it's good to hear that pencils down date is coming, because I think, again, speaking on behalf of an end user, we've been trying to do something with this for a while, and if it's shifting sand that you're trying to build upon, it's not a good use of time resource-wise internally, and it's just extending the amount of time that it's taking my team to go and address these issues. So to hear that this is coming is a good thing. Some of the additional features that you mentioned, André, will be super useful to everyone on the call, I'm sure. And maybe Saurabh can add a little bit of flavor there as to what the pencils down effect actually means. But it's good to hear that it's coming, because as I say, we've been playing around with this for quite some time, and every time it seems to change. So Saurabh, any further information you can provide there?
I hope you guys can hear me, right?
We can.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, thank you so much, community, for this opportunity, and thank you, Mo, Steve, Andre, Alex here, right, Tad. Many fixes are getting in now, right? I know there were some challenges, there were open issues. By the way, if you are having issues, please go to Power Platform Admin Center support known issues. That can also help you to understand what are the open issues, what are active, what are resolved. As Andre, I think, already mentioned, please take the latest PQU, latest quality update in your environment, in your sandbox environment. That is another best way to get to know all these fixes, right? Sandbox, these reports work now. Earlier, they were not. So in your sandbox environment, you can see if you go to license usage summary report, you can find out, okay, what users is supposed to have, what license is supposed to have. Same thing is also reflected in Power Platform Admin Center as well, right? It shows you can select for sandbox environment. It will say no, not required, because license is enforced or validated typically in production environment only. So for sandbox, it will say not replicable, not required, and then in bracket it will tell, let's say it need finance license or SCM. There were other users which were customers who are using user group, right, under Mac, right, M365 Admin Center. So if you are a customer who are using user group, that also is fixed now. You can utilize that as well to assign the licenses at the group level. Let's say I have a group called finance group. I have a group called SCM group, right? And you can just attach users to that instead of assigning it to, let's say, 1,000 users in your M365 Admin Center. So those areas are also fixed now. Those were some gaps in the past. Yeah. Reason for November 15th around that is just like January 15th is coming soon. We're trying to have 60 days before everything nailed down so that the customers who are getting in the first wave, right, who are going to be who may be getting impacted, right? As you know, right, this is a staged rollout now from Microsoft. So earlier it was one date, every region, every customer was getting impacted on one date. So it's a tough thing for customers, tough for partners, even including for Microsoft too, right? To think about the number of issues and the things we need to respond to. So it's just basically getting more staged in that way, and everybody is aligned with their license renewal or anniversary date, whichever comes first after January 15th. So it gives them the time to buy also if they need to. If they need to true down, they can true down, true up, depending on their reporting requirements, license reporting requirements. I can keep going. So again, I don't want to take a lot of time, please.
Right. Thank you very much. I think we can move on to the next slide. Todd, do you want to go ahead and talk about this?
Yeah, sorry about that. So one thing that I've heard from a number of people is like, so I'll be done with my compliance and then I'm done, right? And I personally don't think that that's a good strategy. You have to think about all of this compliance as a continuous process, not a once process. And so in our organization, we've taken on the strategy of saying, we're just going to be reviewing all of our roles pretty much on a continuous basis. And then the question is, well, why would you do that? Well, we're actually using the compliance as a driver to revisit business processes. And we'll talk about that in some of the upcoming slides. But your business is constantly changing, or should be constantly changing. So what you need to run your business should be constantly changing, and what licenses you need to be able to operate your business is most likely constantly changing as well. So we should get into a habit of having a near regular review of compliance. We're checking it every time a new person joins the organization, every time somebody leaves the organization and we free up their license, every time that there's a business process change, or sometimes because something is not compliant, we're going to drive a business process change to become compliant. And a continuous process works for us.
Yeah, I just want to add something to Todd's points there. When we were preparing this session, we spoke at length about platform updates and what would that mean for us moving forward. And if I talk a little bit about our situation at Grable right now, I'm sure many on this call have ISVs. I don't know a client who doesn't, to be fair, but ISVs have different conformance to those general availability dates. So the reason I'm bringing this up is we have two. We have one that as soon as the GA is hit, our ISV update or compatibility update is available to us. The other ISV we have to wait 2 weeks. Now, those windows, yes, they are pretty lengthy from Microsoft's perspective, but if you're looking at a smaller enterprise like our one, that puts a lot of pressure on us to get those things turned around quickly. If you then add in the complex or potentially complex piece of licensing has changed for whatever reason, whether it be feature deployments, whether it be custom code changes that have been affected by the updates from Microsoft, you're already behind the 8 ball. So one of the things that we've talked about a lot internally is how do we up our automated testing game to ensure that it is persona based, that we do have particular roles being tested as we go through our processes. It's a difficult one, and it's one that everyone's going to have to start thinking about as we go beyond just getting compliant. It's going to be again, I use the phrase shifting sands. We all know these platform updates contain things that none of us see in release notes. I think we've got to be real about that. And it's hard to catch some of those things. So it is going to add more credence and more pressure to having an automated testing routine and making sure that you execute it correctly.
Hey, Steve, I always wanted to take a minute to point out, just to reiterate a point I think that y'all made last time, or that came up last time, and that's around the date and not waiting for your renewal date or your true up date as your litmus point. That's the kind of, you've got to start planning well ahead of that. And I just wanted to have you guys comment on that again, just for this group, and just to kind of get that back in the mix.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that one first and then open it up. So ongoing conversations that I have with my account executive team is about, we've got to be seen to be moving the needle in the right direction. So I think the amount of time that I've been hit up on this has decreased, given that the timelines have changed. But the emphasis is still there. They want us to move forward. They want us to be in a position of compliance sooner rather than later, and not leave this until, for us, it's the end of June next year would be our date in which the login enforcement would start. So we could take that as being, we've got a lot of time to go and fix this. But the Microsoft team is aware of our access, what our people are using, which licenses are being consumed, and they're able to see the analysis between what we're consuming and what we've purchased. So it is incumbent on us to do something about that. In every contract, there is always small print, and there is in this one as well, in respect of Microsoft will retain the right to audit. That still carries over, and that's something that everyone needs to be aware of. Tad, anything you want to add to that from an end user perspective before we hand over to André and Alex and Mo?
No, I think you said it very well.
Yeah, I want to emphasize on that. The ISVs is definitely a problem, but also your custom development. So if you have a developer that goes in and adds a permission to a privilege that is used in many roles, then you're effectively upgrading many of their users to the next tier of license if they are not already there. So that would be definitely something that you have to watch out for. And that, as you said, Steve, I think that security testing, user role license testing is going to be crucial going forward once everything's enforced, because last thing you want is that you deploy something to your prod environment and half of your users, or even 5% of your users, are no longer able to log in, and by the time you go in and get the licenses and sign it to them, and they come back into the system, that might take potentially weeks, if not months.
I think one thing, just to kind of add on to what everybody else is kind of said in this case, right, is when we talk about the compliance, I think it's very hard to differentiate between becoming compliant from a license perspective versus compliant from a security perspective, right? Because everything is intertwined together. So this really should be added on to or created as part of a wider security compliance functionality or process within your organization, right? And we really need to start having processes around, okay, when we assign a role to a user, right, is there, we need to have a license check being done, right, to make sure that we're not breaking anything from a we don't assign a role to the user and then they can't log in, right, because all of a sudden they need an additional license. Or in the more extreme fashion, right, if we make a security role change, right, and all of a sudden we bumped up a role that's assigned to a large number of users that require an additional license, like that's, could be a large impact to our organization. And so we really need to start to have some of these processes put in place. It's not just, hey, we need to assign this role to a user, or hey, we need to change this security or create this new security role, right? There really should be a license portion to that as well. But you can't have one without the other, right? It's not just, hey, I need to be compliant from a license perspective, right? And because at the end of the day, it's all going to come back to being compliant from a security perspective as well.
Where it becomes a little bit, oh, sorry.
That's a great lead into our next slide.
Actually, if we talk about compliance, not one and done. As Alex mentioned, there's a difference between security compliance and license compliance. Also, there was a question about ISVs and a bit of talk and the question about ISVs in the chat. In case an ISV menu item is used, then at least the reporting will show that it will require a team member as of now. However, you also should consider the multiplexing factor, which is part of the licensing guide. It might be the case that an ISV is, for example, reusing the project or project list space and do something with a work breakdown structure in a specific other way, where they create menu items for just their solution. Where the standard would require project operations, for example, then the ISV shows today a team member. However, license compliance is that you still should have a project operations license assigned to the user instead of operations activity, for example.
Thank you very much, André, for that clarification. I just have one question from Saurabh, maybe from Microsoft team. Are you guys predicting that any of the quality updates might change the licenses, because those are pushed quite often to the the sandbox and production environments? Is that something that can have an effect on the licensing?
Yeah, I see that question in the chat too, team. Right, this is a good question to cover. Right, like, hey, I take the quality update, I take the service update. Will my license change, right, for at least for standard objects, right? So standard things. If we checked, right, there are almost like 400K, 100K objects are there in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations across all. And for the standard objects, obviously, we have marked them correctly now, right? There are, I would not say 100% marked, but almost 90, 95%, 99% are marked correctly. So those will not change. Obviously, product is always evolving, right? You see, right, Copilot is coming, agents are coming, we have inventory visibility service, we keep enhancing the product broadly more, right? So of course, those new objects will bring some new, whatever the license requirement at the object level too, right? So those things definitely, if new customer or a user is using, they should definitely keep a check on that one. But for existing ones, no, it will not change on those objects. That marking was not done well before, and we heard that too many times from customers. Oh, I was good, I was compliant. There used to be old metadata, right, in some of the licensing reports in finance and operations, which are removed now, right? So, which is corrected now based on licensing guide. So nothing changed on the licensing guide side. It's just corrected in FNO based on the licensing guide.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Saurabh.
Yeah.
Todd, if you want to go on.
So yeah, we've covered this in a couple different points that were made just previously, but the point here is that what you're doing in your business is constantly changing. This is where we were talking earlier about employees joining, leaving, changing roles, things that departments do changes over time, and you'll need to obviously review the security roles that people get. But to Alex's point, you should, as you're reviewing your security roles to make sure that people are doing the right thing, then you should be constantly reviewing your license requirements at the same time. So if you are fixing if you're fixing what somebody can do in a warehouse role because you're changing a business process and you're not paying attention to the licensing, you might accidentally add something that requires an elevated license to your warehouse team, and then suddenly nobody in your warehouse team can actually log in again, assuming that they're doing user logins instead of just warehouse worker device logins. So you could actually have a dramatic impact on the ability of groups of people in your business. And this goes back to the other point of, I think it was Mo was saying that if you're doing customization and you change some of the privileges and you accidentally elevate a role, these are things that have to be regularly reviewed and then cross-checked against your licensing. So some of you might be thinking, well, I can review this quarterly, but that's 3 months of not being able to, of somebody in your business not being able to do anything. So it really has to be a more immediate response to these reviews. The other thing you can do is you can be regularly going through your roles. Let's say you have a bunch of people who have supply chain licenses, and you can go through, review their roles and say they do all of these things in their role, and then there are these 2 things in their role that require a supply chain license. Well, why am I worrying about a supply chain license for just doing these 2 things? You can review your business and say, do these people need to do these 2 things in the role that require an elevated license? Or can I rearrange the way that the business works so that this group of 50 people no longer require the elevated license and could get by with a lower level license? Now, your ability to save money immediately might be limited by your software cloud enrollment or your CSP agreement. You might not be able to downsize your licensing immediately, but I guarantee you, if you try to downsize if you try to make all these changes at the last minute, you're going to get a lot of complaints from your employees. You might as well make the adjustment now and then fix your licensing at your renewal. So keep an eye out for opportunities to change your business.
Thank you very much, Todd. Anyone else has anything to add to this one? All right. We can always come back if there's anything. Todd, you want to continue with the next one?
So we've mentioned this one already, and this was part of the pencils down strategy. Like if you're going in right now, things are constantly changing. Some things are changing because of quality updates, platform updates, things like that. But there's also the set of data that Microsoft is applying outside of your tenant, where they've got a lookup of here's all these privileges and the license that's required for that privilege. Some of that stuff is being changed in their Power Platform report, not necessarily in your environment. And so those things are changing. Now, things are in a bit of flux. We all know that, but the amount of changes that are coming on a regular basis are starting to die off. I think we'll eventually get to this pencils down point, but as things change, I think we'll be in a better position. Now, that's just for what's in the report. Now, the other thing that you have is if you're using out-of-the-box reports, stuff might get added to an out-of-the-box role. If you are signing the out-of-the-box role, then you could get a new feature comes along, new menu items get added, those get added to the out-of-the-box roles, and then you might get a little surprise. Now that's a two-edged sword. If you are keeping your own copy of a role, only the things that you've put into that copy of the role will be in there, and you don't have to worry about Microsoft adding stuff to the role. But at the same time, you won't get the benefit of all the things that Microsoft adds to a role. So you're gonna have to decide what works for your business. I think there's a case to be made in both directions, but roles can be changed by Microsoft over recurring updates. And the next time Microsoft adds a new purchase and adding a whole new set of functionality, some recent examples would be advanced quality management and a few others. Then all that new functionality comes with new roles, and stuff might get added to existing roles. So you'll have to keep an eye on that from time to time.
Yeah, it's a good call out, Tad, and it's something again to be wary of. Real life example from our company, we completed all of our negotiation with our EA contract, got everything in place, got all the licenses the way that we needed them, depending on what people were using. And within 2 months of that, our finance team came to us and said, well, we want to start using business performance planning and analytics, which carries a completely different license SKU than we'd purchased. So you've got to have that balance now of, okay, Do we go and buy more licenses? Do we put this off and just continue to use other means that we have? There's other conversations in here than previous. And that may have always been the case that we would go and do something with this anyway. But the point comes around to when you're locked into these true up, true down situations, and you only get that opportunity on anniversary dates. Something our business doesn't quite understand, but I do because I'm responsible for it. But that's another consideration in there. That jump from standard to premium is pretty hefty from a cost perspective. So it's balancing that. It's balancing that whole piece there, and you can't just say, we're going to jump to these licenses, Microsoft. Can you take away 20 to 30 finance licenses for me? I don't think that's going to fly. They'll always let you buy, but only in certain windows will they let you reduce.
Well, that is an interesting point, and I've heard some strategies, and I think we talked about this in some previous conversations. There are some strategies to put your baseline licenses under your server cloud enrollment, and that gives you a baseline. But there's nothing to stop you from getting additional licenses under a CSP agreement, and then that gives you the option to do, well, you got 3-year agreements under your server cloud enrollment, and then you can do month to month on your CSP agreement. So if you're in a trial phase, or you're not, or if you've got more seasonality of when you need licenses, things like that, then you can use those two agreements together. You get slightly different pricing for the two different batches of licenses. But if you need some flexibility to some more flexibility to downsize, let's say you had 50 finance licenses, you could put 30 of them on your SCE, put 20 of them on your CSP, and you could ramp up your CSP up and down from near zero to however high you wanted to go on a month-to-month basis. So depending upon your license needs, your personnel needs, the changing desires of your business, if you just want to try it, there are ways to play with the licensing tools that are available to give you some more flexibility. The point in the point here about licensing rules can change. I know that Saurabh would like to say that they're not going to change, but my experience with Microsoft is never say never. I mean, we've had to deal with how many name changes to the product, and I know that the very talented engineers and product managers are at the whim of the legal and marketing team for the licensing, not the other way around. So we have to be aware that licensing rules can change, and since some of the licensing reporting is actually based on data that sits outside your tenant, outside your instance, yeah, the reports can change. I think the examples we've given so far is sometimes the report is changing because it still has bugs in it, but as those die down, it doesn't mean that the report will never change, and you'll have to review it on a regular basis.
I take my words back, Ted. You are right. Never say never. Yeah.
I know you don't want to change it, but it doesn't mean that it won't change.
But Tad, you raise a very valid point. Anytime you make a change or a change is enforced upon us through a platform update, we should be running these reports. Like, yeah. I'm sure none of us do that today, but tomorrow, moving forward, we probably have to add this to our arsenal of things to do as administrators to run this and just make sure nothing has changed.
Well, one of the complexities there is that the reports as they currently exist, you only see them for what's in prod. You don't see what will happen based on what's in
very
UAT.
True. Yeah, very true.
So even if you keep your UAT permissions exactly like they are in prod, which we don't, we give people more permission in UAT so they can explore, they can experiment, they can try new business processes. even if we did keep them exactly the same, we still wouldn't get any advance warning. We would deploy the code changes on our Saturday. We'd come in on Monday and say, oh, I can't. A whole bunch of people can't log in, and then we would be scrambling to refactor their roles to make sure they could at least log in.
Yeah, good call out. Alex and Andre, anything that you can add there about how we can get ahead of that as end users?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think there had been improvements from a license usage summary report and user security governance, as well as PPAC on reporting on lower tier environments. So you could potentially get there, but I don't think there's anything that would do the environment comparison, right? I think I've written something about that, or I have a tool, right, that I go out and actually that's what I use internally to do, hey, what changed from version to version, right? And that's for free on my GitHub. But basically, from a user and like security perspective, it allows for a quick validation, right? And so you could, there are some tools to potentially help you, but if you're trying to do native from Microsoft, that the story there is still somewhat manual, right? You'd have to look at it from a test perspective and try to line it up, and compare it against the prod environment, right? Especially that environment to environment comparison is tricky right now. I don't know if anybody else has a workflow or process that they're using to do that, but as of right now, that's kind of what I've been doing internally.
I mean, one of the exceptions to the rule that was that this enforcement is not going to apply to UAT or any other environment other than prod. It would be actually nice if there was a setting where you say, hey, I have one environment where I want this to apply, and at least I can ask my users that I think are affected to log in and see if they can log in. Because right now, there is literally no way of testing this, right? Because if you go to UAT, it never enforces it, and then you're happy. You could have a lot of false positive,
The reporting should come across, but you're correct, Mo, that there's no way to like say, hey, I have this gold environment, right, where I'm going to set up my security and my roles, right, or my licensing, and I want to check this user right before it goes to prod. So yeah, that would be a nice add as well.
I would also just suggest, like, you can indeed see on the licensing reports and the pages in the finance operations that indeed there might be a license change as well. To be able to test it, there will be just when LCS will be replaced by Power Platform Admin Center, it will be possible to switch and sandbox to a production environment. And then you will also encounter that a user is not able to log in anymore, and then later switch it back to a sandbox.
Heavy-handed approach, André. I like it.
However, I'm not recommending to just switch a production environment back to sandbox. That's not what I'm saying here. No.
Thank you, André, for saying that. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
As for the changes on licensing tool, I know we have release notes for all the features that are coming, and I think we do have a list that Alex, I think you update for each release. But it would be nice to see a change like that, to say if any of these licenses, the rules change, and therefore some of these out-of-the-box licenses are required for those roles, would be nice to have that included in the release notes, so that people can take in advance and see if they can do something. So I don't know if this is something that is in plans, Saurabh, if there are any developments there.
Yeah, no, that's a feedback taken. We do have release plans, right? For each release, quality update, not quality, the service updates, right? It shows what are the new features coming. We also have the deprecation notices too, right? For each releases that comes in advance too. I think for this one also, if we are changing on existing objects, I think definitely we should have that somewhere. I will take that feedback. Yeah, for sure.
And Ian is also here. I think he's available at the chat if anyone has any question from Microsoft team. All right.
Yeah. I'm also pasting a link in the chat, known issues, right? You will see bunch of known issues there. So I always just filter. There is a search option, licensing, and with licensing, you can see under title is starting Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, right? Licensing. So you can find out all the issues, known issues related to. You might have some challenges which maybe already is there resolved, addressed, or you know which quality update to take, which can fix it. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Todd, I think we talked about this a little bit. Do you want to add anything else?
We did. I mean, just to recap what we talked about before, we talked about the team license for custom stuff, unless the ISV adds ties anything to a specific license. We talked about the multiplexing issue, and the fact you're still required to have the correct license, even if it doesn't show up in the report because of whatever the ISV did with multiplexing. One thing, we talked a little bit about if you have an existing ISV, but to organizations who are considering adding add-ons or ISVs, just make sure that you take a look at that licensing impact during the procurement process. Historically, the ISVs have worried about their license, but not the impact on your Dynamics license. They've been in two different buckets, or they don't want to talk about your Dynamics licensing. I anticipate there's going to be more interaction moving forward, and you just want to make sure you're not going to get caught surprised after deploying the ISV solution.
Great. Just a quick time check. We got 5 minutes to kind of wrap this through and get everybody back on their day. It's been a lot of information. Just a quick update. We've dropped the recording for number 1 in the chat a couple times, but I'll send that back out to this group just to make sure you have it in one place. I'll also send the wrap up from last time's Q&A as a document. I couldn't attach it here. And we'll be looking at part 3. So keep your eye out for that too. That'll be coming up next month. And with that, I'll let you all finish up.
Yeah, so there's two slides left. There's this one and then a quick summary. So going back to the earlier slide of looking at business process change, be aware that not everything has to be done by a person. So anecdotally, I can say that we switched from our warehouse receiving personnel doing the product receipt on purchase orders, which requires a finance license because it's a financial transaction. And we switched the business process so that they are doing a item arrival journal, which is a physical transaction and can be done with an activity license. But we still needed to do the product receipt. So then we built out a batch job to do the product receipt. And that means that the batch job is being done by a privileged user. But the item arrival journals are being done by the warehouse personnel with now a lower level license, because we reviewed and said, of all the things that the receiving personnel do, there was just these 2 things that they needed the supply chain license for. We were able to revamp their business process and reduce the licensing footprint and improve the security posture of segregation of duties and things like that. So just keep an eye out for automation. As IT people, sometimes we think about that, but not every business process person thinks about that. Okay.
Yeah, those are great points, and I think using Power Automate or any automation outside B365 that would definitely help in bringing down the number of licenses.
As long as you don't run afoul of the multiplexing limitation.
For sure.
All right.
Anyone else would like to add anything here? We have 4 minutes left and 1 more slide. All right.
Just a reminder for everybody coming out of this session, some things to to keep in mind going back to your organization. Make sure that you have somebody who is responsible for governance, preferably a team. Make sure that that team is authorized to say no to getting more licensing and pushing back, so that you don't have different branches of your business just saying, give me a license, and it doesn't matter what it costs, because at the end of the day, it costs somebody. Make sure you're monitoring stuff regularly. I put the word monthly on here, but it might turn out that you have to review it daily, depending upon your turnover. When you are making changes to your organization, whether it's a business process, an ISV solution, adding a new module, implementing a new module, licensing checks are going to have to be a part of it, and they should be done up front, not last. You don't want to sell everybody on the greatness of a new module and then say, oh, by the way, it's going to be X $100,000, and then everybody gets really disappointed and upset that they wasted their time getting excited. And lastly, continue to work on your business process optimization, automation, changing business processes, stripping things out of roles that people don't really need, and see if you can chip away enough that you can get by with a lesser license. And it's probably better to have a lesser license and more people in your organization using Dynamics than to have just a very small number of people with high-level licenses using Dynamics. You'll get a lot more throughput through the application, through your business, the more people you can engage in using Dynamics at any level. So
Yeah, definitely. I think the administration, as you put it, Todd, I think once you're done with this, the administration work is going to be coming, and everyone should be prepared for that. Life is not going to be like before. After all this information in place, everyone should be more vigilant about, what they are consuming and what they are going to be consuming, what they're adding, and how that all that impacts their licensing. I think we are good. Any other final comments from anyone? Any of the speakers? You would like to add something?
Nothing from me, Mo. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody, and for Tad and I in particular, we're in the same boat as most people on this call. We're trying to work through this too. So yeah, it's interesting times.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alex, Steve, Todd, André, and Saurabh, as well as Bobby. Appreciate everyone's time. And the next part 3 is going to be mid-December. Bobby and Doug will communicate all the information to you guys. So if you'd like to attend that, we'll be more than happy to host you. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you all. Great conversation.
Thanks, all.
Great topic. Appreciate it. Have a great holiday season if you're celebrating, and we'll see you in December.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.